Some of the most meaningful jewelry you own isn't new. It's inherited. A ring from a grandmother, a necklace full of memories, but no longer your style. Duke's Jewelers reimagines family heirlooms into custom pieces you'll actually wear and love. Working one-on-one, Duke's designers honor the original story while creating something fresh and modern. Don't let meaningful jewelry sit unused. Let it live on beautifully. Visit Duke's Jewelers in Springville or online at dukesjewelers.com, where old stories become new treasures.
Derek Overstreet, founder of the New Millennium Group. We're a financial planning firm. We have advisors standing by right now to take your call. 888-999-6370. The reason you're going to want to call is we're going to help you retire 3 to 5 years before you thought possible. The way we do this is by putting together a step-by-step plan. So if you're one of those people listening and you'd like a plan in writing, give us a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370, or go to utahsfinancialplanner.com.
Believe it or not, this guy actually has friends.
Nice.
This is Scotty G and Friends on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, kicking off the final hour of the show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Let's bring in good friend of the program. He is Mitch Harper, Cougar Insider, KSLSports.com. Mitch, how the heck are you, man?
Doing good, Scotty. I don't know if I'm as good as probably Aggie Nation right now because Ben Jacobson, that's a really good hire.
See, you know, it's interesting, and I know you like this because this is just the life we live as members of the sports media. The discrepancy between those that are the national media or college basketball insiders or those that have been around the game, their opinion of this hire, and then your Aggie fans on Twitter are very, very different right now. And I don't know if it was because the Mark Madsen stuff blew up last night and everybody got really fired up about that, which, as Cam Walker just joined us, said he's like, I don't know where this was coming from. He's like, I apparently hired a guy that I didn't even talk to. And so I don't know why it is, but Aggie fans not overly thrilled, but anybody who knows the game of basketball and has been covering the game of basketball thinks this is a big hire.
Yeah, it seems like a guy too that would stay a long time too, maybe 5 years at least, and be someone that wants to build a program. I mean, he did it at the Missouri Valley, and I think too what kind of caught my attention was just again the Pac-12 is going to be the best of the rest, and right there be one of the best leagues in college basketball next year. I think it's gonna be a really good football league too. And I think that is a big step up from the Valley. And to get a guy that was there for 20 years, that's big time. He's got to a Sweet 16. I just think it was a really good hire. And that's why I had to bring it up, because I think that's a huge get for Utah State, and someone that can really cement himself potentially as a long-term guy instead of just being the up-and-coming 2-year guy and then exit, be someone that can build a program like Stu Morrill did back in the day.
Obviously, spring football's got your attention right now. If you are Kevin Young, what's your and this is with the knowledge that or the anticipation that A.J. DeBonsa will leave, which I think we all know and anticipate will happen. What's your first order of business, knowing that you got Branch coming, but trying to build out this team going forward?
You got to have shooters, and I think that a lot of focus is going to be, I think, from fans on the defensive side, and they do need to get better. Even though it was probably hard to see it in stretches this season, but I do believe that they did get better this season defensively in moments and stretches of this season. BYU did have some times where the product did look better on the defensive end, but I think ultimately the offense took a big step back this season, and they should have been a lot better, at least what they looked to be on paper going into the year, but they didn't have consistent shooters, guys that could knock down threes. And I think when you had a guy like A.J. DeBonsa, you needed to have shooters around him, and they just didn't have that. And that even included when Richie Saunders was in the lineup. He was up and down shooting the three. He had some games where he was 0 for 7. And Bruce Branch is not like A.J. DeBonsa. He's more a catch and shoot type of guy, but he's also a good passer too. And he's really standing out in the McDonald's All-American practices this week down in Arizona. And I think that, shooting is going to be key. I think that ultimately you got to have offense, and you got to be a team that can put it in the hole consistently. And I just don't think that BYU had enough of that outside of AJ, who consistently could always get to his spots and get his, but he just didn't have the shooters around him. And I think that was the biggest issue. And that's what Kevin Young is going to have to look for quite a bit in this portal and building out this team for next year. They also bring in Dean Rickert from the high school ranks, but they've got to retool through the transfer portal, and shooting is going to be a top priority.
What's your anticipation of the decision of Rob Wright?
I expected he would be back. And, Rob Wright has really enjoyed his time at BYU this season. And Kevin Young believes in Rob Wright that they can build around him. Now, I think Wright, though, has got to, if he does run it back and returns to BYU, he's got to be someone that can bring it all together and unify the team and maximize everyone's talents around him. I think one of the knocks on Rob Wright this past season, defensively, there were some lapses. I do think at the end of the season, the postseason, he got better, particularly in the Big 12 tournament, because it kind of hit rock bottom in that loss at West Virginia. But, you saw a big step back in play on the offensive end from Keba Keita from his junior season to his senior year. And I think the biggest change was going from Yegor Dielman to Rob Wright. And that changed things because Rob Wright was taking a lot of that space, that real estate in the paint, where maybe Keita was operating freely with Yegor, who was actively looking for him on alley-oops and getting him involved early and often in games as that rim rolling five that Kevin Young loves in his system. That changed. And I think Rob Wright's got to be better at looking beyond just simply the superstar guy with him. And that was AJ this past year. And Bruce Branch would expect it to be that type of guy, depending on how this roster comes together. But I think Rob Wright, is someone that you want to continue to build with, I believe. And I think that he's not a bad guy in terms of the locker room. I think he's just a little bit too quiet. He's really young, and he's still kind of like a kid, even though there's been big dollar amounts attached to his name and what that's been, the movement that he's had from Baylor to BYU. Can he really become a leader of the locker room? And I think that's going to be the challenge for Rob Wright, and where I have maybe the biggest questions, because when you look at that, early roster for next year, if Rob Wright was to run it back, he would be looked upon to be the guy, because you're not going to bank on Bruce Branch to be that guy. It needs to be someone who's been part of it, and would be Rob Wright. And can he take on that role? I kind of compared a little bit to LJ Martin in football, where he was so young and so quiet. And, now he's evolved into that leader for the football side. Can Rob Wright take a jump like that if he does return to BYU? And I expect that, he would be back at BYU if he does decide to stay in the college ranks.
With where Damon went in the draft and where we anticipate AJ will go in the draft, and considering Yegor's first year in the NBA, that if the money's even, which I know BYU can hang with anybody financially in college basketball, so that shouldn't be a problem. How appealing now is playing basketball at BYU for a kid coming out of high school?
I think it's very appealing because, Kevin Young is shown, he's given proof of concepts. That's what Kevin Young's all about, proof of concepts. And I think that, if you're a high school prospect who has aspirations to be a one and done and go to the NBA, you're going to be prepared for the National Basketball Association. I really believe that Yegor going 8th overall last year was in part because of the respect that the Brooklyn Nets had for Kevin Young. Next to the Utah Jazz, the Brooklyn Nets were the second most, frequent visitor to that annex. The year that Yegor was playing at BYU, Brooklyn was always on the scene watching Yegor's games and being in Provo to see him in person. I think a part of it was because they believed that Yegor was being prepared and trained like a pro, where many mock drafts going into last summer's draft had Yegor around 14 and lower. The Nets took him at 8 because I think there was a lot of confidence that they knew that he was being trained like an NBA player already. that when he'd step into the league, he'd be able to contribute right away. And that happened despite, up and down 3-point shooting at the college ranks from Yegor. He was really consistent before his injury this rookie season with the Nets, to where he set, a rookie NBA record for most consecutive games with at least one 3-pointer, which would have been crazy to say during his time at BYU, because he was in the 20s in 3-point shooting. So I think Kevin Young's got a lot of respect of NBA front offices, the way that he develops and trains players. And you saw that too with AJ, that he got better over the course of the season. So the whole NBA development is definitely there. Now, can Kevin Young also turn that NBA development, which is proving itself to be very beneficial? And he wants that to continue to be a part of his program, because he made it clear that it was bittersweet to leave the NBA and potentially lose those connections to the NBA. Well, the bridge to that is getting these young, promising one and done guys. And that's allowed him to maintain those relationships. So that's going to be a key piece for BYU's program. But can they parlay that into more consistent on-court success at the college ranks? Because it is different games. And that's going to be finding that happy balance for Kevin Young going forward. And I do think there were some lessons learned this season for Kevin Young that he's going to apply in the years going forward, finding maybe guys that aren't necessarily the greatest measurables or the greatest, NBA bodies potentially, but maybe they're just great college players, and leaning into that a little bit more in building out the depth of the roster rather than just focusing solely on measurements and verticals and things like that and big bodies that look like NBA personnel. So finding that happy balance will be important going forward for Kevin Young and his program to try to get back to future Sweet 16s down the road.
How much considering that there are a lot of built-in excuses, the Richie Saunders injury, the other injuries that took place earlier in the year, is not making the Sweet 16, how bitter of a taste in the mouth of Kevin Young in this program is there right now?
It's really bitter, and it's a huge disappointment, because even without Richie, they still should have won at least one game.
Yeah.
But they should have. This is a team that was built in the investment financially, and the number exactly what it was. Unless we saw every single contract, we wouldn't know specifically. But there was a strong commitment financially to go make a real run at this thing, and you get bounced in the round of 64 like many BYU teams that didn't have a dime attached to its name. So it looked very similar to what BYU fans have really grown accustomed to their whole time watching BYU basketball, getting bounced, giving up career days to a guy in the NCAA tournament. That's the same song and dance BYU's always played. So huge disappointment. And to have one of the 4 best players in college basketball, because AJ's a finalist for the Naismith, and to just get bounced in the first round, that's disappointing. And the thing is that I always point to, we saw issues even in non-conference play before the arrest of Kennard Davis, before the injury to Dawson Baker, before the injury to Richie Saunders. We saw issues with this team as early as even the Delaware game in early November, where they're giving up, they're in a big double-digit deficit at home to Delaware. And, Delaware was not a great team this year, and they were faced with a hole. And so there were issues even early on before all of the things started to stack up against them. The good thing for BYU, though, over the past, season was that AJ elevated his game and he evolved, but there were issues all along the way, and it never felt like it all just clicked completely for BYU. Maybe the Clemson game was maybe its peak when Rob Wright hit that thrilling bucket. But even in that game, they're down 20 plus at half, and they needed an amazing comeback to pull it off. So again, it never fully clicked night after night for a full 40 minutes, like that first year with Kevin Young, where they reeled off 8 straight to close out the season and got to the Sweet 16. This team just never had that at any point this year. And for that, I think it makes it a really disappointing year.
All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk football as spring ball continuing on. What have been the storylines that have really jumped out at you so far?
I think one of the big things that's kind of caught my attention is that how Kalani Sitake has noted that Kelly Papinga is exceeding his expectations as a defensive coordinator. Kalani has made it known, with anyone that will ask or he'll talk to, is that K-Pop was the guy that he wanted to a point as the defensive coordinator, to the point where he was even in the back of his mind thinking if Jay Hill leaves, and I'm sure Kalani knew better than anyone that there was real opportunities every offseason for Jay Hill to bounce. So Kalani was probably building out his own big board of potential DC targets, and the guy that Kalani says was atop that target list was Kelly Papinga. And with only 1 week left in spring ball, Kalani has said that K-Pop is exceeding expectations that he had coming into spring with the way that he's managing the defense and overseeing this thing. And that's got to be nice for Kalani, because Kalani, of course, having his background with defense and still having, Gary Anderson and then Chad Kahaha still on the staff. He's now elevated to the outside linebackers role. They still maintain Justin Enna, who just takes on special teams. He managed the loss of Jay Hill, which was significant and a big departure. And I'm curious to see what this looks like with Kelly Papinga this season. But Kalani has never been one to just go out of his way to say he feels really good about a certain or to embrace conversation about expectations. For him to say that K-Pop is exceeding his expectations and that he's really confident this is going to be a good thing defensively, I thought it was noteworthy from Kalani, because, again, he just doesn't play that game. He goes into a lot of coach speak more times than not, and he's been really impressed with Kelly Papinga's done it. And you can't deny what there's been glimpses of being seen on the defensive side. Like, you're seeing some of the edge rushers, they're outside linebackers, like a Hunter Clegg's leaned out a little bit. Former Utah signee, returned home from his mission, and he's part of BYU's defense. He's going to be a really big piece going forward for BYU. Braxton Lindsey, a former 4-star recruit who picked BYU over Oklahoma. He's going to be a name to watch. There's a lot of talent, and K-Pop has had so much success in his coaching career with guys like Kyle Vinoy, Fred Warner, and you're seeing signs of that. So it's a little bit of a merging of the Bronco era and the Kalani era, and a little bit of Kyle Whittingham influence into this program. It's an interesting mix of how this is going to come together, this defense, and Kalani feels really good about it. I think that's probably one of the big storylines in the final week of spring.
Is JoJo Phillips your number one receiver coming out of fall camp, or do you think somebody elevates that position?
I'll say he's number one right now, but I wouldn't be married to it. If I was Fesi Satake and Aaron Roderick, I think it's still a case of you got to go prove it in games. Ultimately, I do think that so far he's looked pretty good in spring ball, and BYU's got a good secondary returning. Evan Johnson's been in and out. They're kind of holding him out precautionary to ultimately get him ready for the fall and be ready to go there. So you're not getting one-on-ones, one first team defense, first team offense all the time. So it's still kind of wait and see. And I think the Pop-Tarts Bowl performance from JoJo was really good. And he was someone that had a great relationship, developed a lot of chemistry early on when Bear Bachmeier arrived on campus last summer. And that showed itself early on last season, where Bear was always looking to JoJo before he suffered that shoulder injury against Stanford. And so maybe they can pick up that chemistry and build that into this season. But, I think that the tight end position is really what's going to help BYU the most with its passing attack this year, because they've got two players in Walker Lyons and Roger Saliapaga. It's probably the best 1-2 tight end receiving unit that BYU's had, probably at least since the Matt Bushman year, and when they were going into 2020 and they had Bushman and Isaac Rex, and then Bushman goes down with an injury. It's probably that best tandem since then, and maybe even have to go back further to actually see production. So this is a pretty good tight end unit, and they feel like they go 4 deep at that spot with Noah Moiaki as well, and Kean Need is more of a blocker. So that's going to be, I think, the position that could get targeted quite a bit and be up there in the receiving yards. We saw that with Carson Ryan, but I think it goes to an even higher level with Lyons and Saliapaga in the receiving game for this tight end unit.
So what are your thoughts? Buha's put on some weight. He's at, I think, 280 now, and the plan is to move him to D tackle, correct?
That's right. Yeah, Viliami Pua is going to be in the interior, and so he's going to be making the switch full time. He dabbled with it a little bit last year from D end, uh, occasionally in that odd front, playing some D tackle, but now he's going to be a full time defensive tackle, and it's the right move because again, he's added a lot of weight. And look, I mean, his dad's one of the great D tackles in Utah history, and it was a vet in the NFL, and he's coaching on BYU's defensive line this year. So dad probably knows best in that situation, and Viliami goes to the interior, and he'll team up with guys like, Keanu Tanavasa, who returns, and Keanu's kind of in that bucket of players that's, probably, being held out for the most part to get ready for what's going to be waiting ahead in the fall. But, you've also got Justin Kirkland, too, Oklahoma State transfer last year. Didn't really make much of an impact at all last season. He dealt with the knee injury in fall camp, and that put him really behind the eight ball pretty much the entire season. I remember he made that return in the Colorado game in late September, but just never really got going. It seemed like he was lost a little bit. Now he's healthy. He's ready to go. I expect more production from him. And it might be a case of you never see him pop up in a stat sheet, but he's going to be assignment sound and be tough in helping with BYU, stopping the run and being stout on that regard. So I think he'll be in that mix too. And then Anisi Purcell, another senior. Those are probably your top four guys for BYU in the interior of the defensive line.
What transfer player do you anticipate having, or you don't have to go with one, but maybe two or three transfer guys that you anticipate having a big impact on this team?
Lions and Saliapaga, as I noted, but I would also add too Kyler Casper from Oregon.
That's who I was going to bring up. No big numbers, but man, he's a big mamma jamba out there.
No production really at all since he, was the 4 years at Oregon, 2 season-ending foot injuries, had a connection with Trayson Bourget, BYU's, backup quarterback right now, the number 2 guy at this point, heading into the final week of spring ball. They had a connection through their time in 7-on-7 football in Arizona. And when Casper hit the portal, Bourget kind of brought Casper up to BYU coaches, and BYU recruited him lightly out of high school, and he was a 4-star recruit before he committed to Oregon. But he's someone that I think if you talk about going back to the conversation of number 1 wide receiver, Casper could end up being that potentially. I think that's a big jump again from no production 4 years in college to now being a number 1 for a team that's looking to break through and get to the playoff. But I think that he is someone that has been garnering rave reviews in spring ball so far, and there's high expectations for him. I mean, I would look at Casper, JoJo Phillips, Tana Kua. Those are probably some of the top 3 guys, Reggie Frischneck, Cody Hagan, and then true freshman legend Glasker being in there too. And you've also got Tiger Bachmeier returning. So BYU's got options. It's just all those names I mentioned, that sounds deep when you mention the names, but really no one's produced at a high level consistently to where you feel really good about the value you get for that guy at wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. So it's still to be determined, but there's some optimism at that wide receiver spot. And Kyler Casper, I think his arrival and his impact he's showing in spring ball is reason to believe that they could still be a pretty productive unit, because if he wasn't showing signs in spring, I think you'd have a little bit more, not bleak outlook, but you wouldn't be as optimistic that they could be highly productive if he wasn't having the success he's having so far in spring ball.
It's funny, and this always makes me feel old when I see things like this. Another reason I brought him up is because I remember his dad playing for the Broncos, and it wasn't that long ago that Kevin Casper was a heck of a wide receiver in the Broncos. I think he played 8 years in the league with the Broncos and others, but there's some good genetics there for sure.
He is, yeah, and his dad played at Iowa, and then as you noted, the Broncos, and Casper too has got a younger brother who's a 3-star guy down in Arizona that BYU's offered. So they're really bought into that family, and Aaron Roderick's talked about the connection with knowing the dad, knowing, the Casper family and kind of forming a good relationship with them, to taking a chance. And that's, and he is a different type of transfer that BYU has just not been pursuing in recent portal cycles. The common thread with many of the portal guys that BYU adds that you point to is that they had a really strong existing relationship before committing or going to another program out of high school. BYU typically always goes for those guys like a Paki Finau, who's probably going to be BYU starting left tackle this year. He transfers in from Washington. BYU was recruiting him heavily out of high school. They couldn't get him the first go round. The moment he hits the portal, they kind of hit the ground running and pick up where they left off, and they make that portal acquisition happen quickly. Whereas, again, Kyler Casper, they recruited him a little bit, but it wasn't too extensive where it was still kind of a little bit of a wild card, and they had the connection with the younger brother. And then when Kyler hit the portal and Bourget, his connection all kind of came together, but still it didn't fit the typical way of going about a BYU portal acquisition where it's like, yes, they knew the position coach. They kind of make this thing seamless and just take it. They just go forward with it. But I think it's needed for BYU because, again, I think if they're going to break through and go win the Big 12, try to get to the playoff, they've got to take some big swings on guys that maybe they've never worked with before, hands-on, and just try to go get, some players. I think it would have been huge for BYU had there been a spring portal to maybe fill a few of the gaps potentially coming out of spring, but still, this is a pretty good football team and one that should have a pretty high floor going into fall of 2026.
Good stuff as always. Appreciate your time, Mitch, and we'll talk again here very soon, I'm sure.
You bet, Scotty. Take care, man.
There he is, Mitch Harper, Cougar Insider at KSLSports.com. All right. Coming up, we'll revisit part of our conversation with Cameron Walker, athletic director at Utah State. It's all straight ahead right here on The Zone.
Every day, the world gets a little weirder and a lot more awesome. Cool Stuff Daily takes a look at everything from mining in space to the latest in the fight against cancer to how AI is, basically changing everything. It's all the cool stuff you didn't know you needed to know. Join us for Cool Stuff Daily as we take a quick look at science, tech, and the wait, what stories that make you sound way smarter at dinner. Subscribe to Cool Stuff Daily now because the future's happening fast and it's way too fun to miss.
Did you know fluoride is not available in Utah water systems, and fluoride supplements work best from 6 months to 16 years old? A healthy smile isn't just about teeth, it's about health and confidence. Your smile matters. Find resources at yoursmileutah.org.
I sold my car in Carvana last night.
Well, that's cool.
No, you don't understand. It went perfectly. Real offer, down to the penny. They're picking it up tomorrow. Nothing went wrong.
So, what's the problem?
That is the problem. Nothing in my life goes as smoothly. I'm waiting for the catch.
Maybe there's no catch.
That's exactly what a catch would want me to think.
Wow, you need to relax.
I need to knock on wood. Do we have wood? Is this table wood?
I think it's laminate.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's close enough.
Car selling without a catch. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
Do you love rom-coms? Do you wish you could talk about Christmas movies year-round? Then we have the perfect podcast for you, Hallmarkies Podcast. Throughout the year, we cover all things romance, holiday, and Hallmark, including recaps of every Hallmark show, like When Calls the Heart and The Way Home. You can also get loads of bonus content covering shows like Bridgerton, Sweet Magnolias, and Just Like That. We are an all-female group of friends who are passionate for these shows and movies and give our honest opinions as well as gush over what we love so much. But that's not all. Every Monday, there are interviews with all your favorite actors, writers, directors, and more. Check out Hallmarkies Podcast on all your podcast providers and on YouTube. That's Hallmarkies Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts.
You're locked on to Scotty G and Friends on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Hey, coming up this week, it's another edition of Win Ticket Wednesday. How about this one? This is good. You, on Wednesday, have a chance to win tickets to go see Weezer with the Shins and Silver Sun. You pick up at Silver Sun Pickup, excuse me. There we go. That's going to take place at Maverick Center coming up on September 15th. So if you want those tickets, make sure to be listening all day on Wednesday. Every show will be giving away a pair of tickets. All right, I had a chance to catch up with Cameron Walker, athletic director at Utah State, Ben Jacobson, the new basketball coach in Logan. And I asked him what really separated Ben Jacobson from the rest of the candidates at Utah State.
Yeah, when you look at what he's accomplished and what he's done in his career, I think it was hard for us to picture getting where we want to go without someone that's been there before. And I think his accomplishments, his resume, and then you add to it, every person you talk to says exceptional coach, even better human being. It just kind of snowballed. And when you get in a room with him, I remember talking to another coach, but I got in a room with him and said, he's not telling you what you want to hear. He's telling you exactly what he believes. And Greg McDermott and I even had this conversation. I said, I'm not sure he's capable of telling me what I want to hear. And he said, he's not. He's just a straight shooter. He's going to tell you exactly what he thinks. And then, honestly, our vision, without me even expressing my vision, his vision for what he thought Utah State athletics could be and should be was exactly what we've been saying. And when those match up and you get a great human being to do the work with, sky's the limit, and we're super excited.
What is that vision that the two of you share?
I think it's about elevating the program. The second weekend's a big part of it. And also chasing down in the new Pac-12 the leaders, and those that'll have more resources. Certainly Gonzaga has done a tremendous job. And, you know, in league meetings, I've been conscientious to say, we don't want to pull Gonzaga back to the rest of us. We want to elevate our program so that we're at their level, not try and pull them back. And I think that's what we want to do. Like they've got a tremendous model, so it's only out of respect for what they've done, but like we want to catch them. We want to be a program like that. And in order to do that, I think we need, like I said, someone who's been there, but also some sustainability. I think it's just difficult if we go through this 1 to 2 year cycle to really build the momentum we need. We can be competitive. We can make the tournament every year, but it's hard to have that next level of success.
So I think that's interesting because that's the paradigm has shifted a little bit in terms of surviving at Utah State and now excelling at Utah State, because it's felt like for so many years a coach leaves and then it was like, okay, let's just find somebody to kind of hold on and keep it where we're at. You're looking at it like, okay, we've done this. Now it's time to elevate to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, when I look at coaches that are where we want to be, Sweet 16, Elite Eights, and the coaches, you know, as I looked around at the coaches in the Sweet 16, they're very experienced coaches. They've done a lot. They've got long resumes. They've been there, and they've got some battle scars, and Coach Jacobson has those. But we're not satisfied being an NCAA tournament team or an NCAA tournament participant. We want to chase it. And if you're not getting better and you're not trying to improve, it makes it, I don't know. That's what gets me up in the morning, and I can tell that's what gets Coach Jacobson up in the morning, and I think that's why he's a great fit.
To pry a guy away from a university where he's been at for, you know, over 2 decades and has had tremendous success, that's not easy to do. What was it about Utah State that made him decide? Because he's had opportunities in the past, but made him finally decide, okay, this is the program I want to leave to.
Yeah, he has had plenty of opportunities in the past. He's turned down some big time Power 4 jobs. And I think, you know, it was our alignment and vision. I think it was how we're resourcing this program. And it was his belief in us that he can chase those championships. I mean, he's not trying to make it back to the Sweet 16. He's got bigger thoughts than that. There's some scars that he has from just missing out on that next level, and he wants to get there. And he feels like this is a place where he can do it and really chase that success. And then, certainly we wanted to convince him, and there's a lot of things positive here from the momentum of the school, the alignment between our board and our president and me. And I think those things were all enticing.
Cameron Walker, athletic director at Utah State, on the job for less than 6 months, and you got to make probably one of the most important hires in athletic department history.
Yeah.
No pressure there.
It comes at you quick. Yeah, no pressure. That's Stu Morrill and I talked, and that's basically what he said to me. We talked last week. I believe in getting that visit with the student athletes, got their thoughts, called Stu, and Stu's advice was simple: don't screw it up. That's obviously what we're trying to do, but it's a pressure thing, and you feel the weight of it, and you want to get it right, and you want everybody to embrace it. But at the same time, getting it right for these student athletes is even more important than the rest of it. And so as we sat down with all of our candidates, you're really viewing it from the lens of, will these guys, will Mason Falsub, will Carson Templin, will Jordy Barnes, all of them, right? Will they like this coach? Can I see them relating? How would they respond to this? And you try and view it for that lens and get the best coach for your student athletes, because they're going to spend a lot of time together.
It's interesting you bring that up, because when you're hiring, maybe 15 years ago, or even frankly, probably 5 years ago, when you hire a coach, you're thinking, okay, who's the best coach for my program? But then but now it's an element of, well, who are they going to bring with them? How are they in fundraising? How are our current players going to relate to them? There's so many other little things that come into play now because of NIL and free transfers and all those other things. How hard is it to kind of clear through all of that? Or I guess how much importance do you put on that, as opposed to, can the guy just flat out coach?
Yeah, I think for me, it's twofold. And because there's so many elements, I think it's helped me zero in the last few years as I've been a part of hires on what's the most important thing. And to me, it's, will the student athletes have an unbelievable experience with the individual? Will he make them better? Will he make in this case, can he make them men and chase championships? And then can he flat out coach? And it's hard to check both those boxes. But this guy checks both those boxes. And I think it's just important as you go through that. There is so many things, but you have to keep the most important things, the main thing, in the top of your priority.
Cameron Walker, athletic director at Utah State, right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. What has been the conversations throughout the process? You mentioned that you met with the team as soon as Jared Calhoun made it official. He was on to Cincinnati. But what have those continued conversations been like? And has Coach Jacobson had a chance to chat with those guys yet?
Yeah, so Coach Jacobson had a chance to get with the guys on Zoom. I'm sure he's making some calls. We're also setting up some meetings and some stuff tomorrow after the press conference with them. And then really I've stayed in touch with 2 or 3 of them as much as they've wanted to. A bunch of them have texted me and called me throughout the process just to stay connected. And I update them and I tell them exactly where we're at. And I don't talk candidate names with them because I don't think that's fair to put them in that spot. But I talked to them about the attributes and the interest and the type of candidates that we're looking at and quality of them. And I think that's been important through the process to just stay connected with them. Again, as much as they want to be. Some of them haven't wanted to, and they're like, I need some space right now to do some thinking. And that's great too. It's at whatever level they've wanted to engage. But certainly some of them have engaged heavily, and it's certainly been on our mind as we've gone through this process.
There's a lot of conversations and Freedom of Information Acts in terms of contracts and things like that. There is a buyout courtesy of Jared Calhoun that would provide a bit of influx of resources available to you. How do you go about earmarking those? And is that a conversation with Ben in terms of NIL, or is that with Dalton on staff, or how do you determine how to immediately address the transfer portal, which will begin here in a couple days?
Yeah, and that timing was important. Why to get this done this week? We're a week, basically next Tuesday, that portal opens up. Obviously, I've said time and time again, talent acquisition and retention is the most important thing. And in this case, twofold, on the coaching staff and head coach, as well as on the player side. So certainly, we obviously probably not going to throw all that in 1 year, space it out a little bit, but we will use that money certainly in that space to elevate this program.
So when you look at Ben Jacobson and how he's adapted to this new world, there's a lot of, and I don't want to call it, there's a lot of grizzled veterans, I guess we should say, that have been around the league or been around college basketball and college athletics for a long time that have had a hard time adapting to this new world. How do you feel like he has done in that area?
I think he's done really well. And given the resources he's had and kind of the hand he had, I think it's been incredible. He was there's been some complaints here about, our resources and how much we have and things of that nature. And certainly we're trying to build that and increase that as much as we can. I think this next year will, obviously be at a very competitive level. But for that cards he kind of had in his hand, I think he's played that really, really well. They're either their leading scorer or second leading scorer this past year was a transfer kid. He's done well getting the right kids and making sure that those are the right fit too. And I think that's important. And we've seen that. I thought Coach Calhoun did a terrific job with that as well, going to the portal for some of those needs and getting the right kid that can help you on the court, but also the right fit. And I think Ben understands both those and has been highly successful at doing that at Northern Iowa.
All right, so I'm going to steal a line from the first line you're going to issue tomorrow at your press conference because every AD says it, but sometimes it's true and sometimes it may not be true. How impressed were you with the level of candidates that wanted this job?
Very impressed. So yeah, I'll try and state it more eloquently than that tomorrow. But the pool was incredibly deep. It was tons and tons of interest. We have a lot of people that candidly could do this job. There were a lot of people that you could envision being successful. That's great news. On the search side, it makes it very difficult to then say, okay, but who would be the very best? But I mean, high level of coaches that have accomplished a lot of things, whether it's, Final Fours, whether it's, assistant coaches at Final Fours, lots of high level stuff that they've accomplished and done and throughout the entire country. I think it speaks to that we were able to land somebody with a resume and as accomplished as Coach Jacobson, that this program has elevated. It's not the same program that we used to, and we can get people that are very established head coaches to be very interested in positions at Utah State.
I had a assistant coach that I've known for a long time at a P4 school reach out and said, I don't think I can get a sniff at this thing. And he goes, if I were at where I was at 6-7 years ago, I think I would have had a really good chance. But now, I really don't think I've got any kind of chance whatsoever, just based on the quality of people that I know are going after this gig. When you cast a net, were there tangible, specific things that you wanted to see, like head coaches, current head coaches, like initial, amount of 20-plus wins? Was there a number, tangible numbers that you wanted to see in regards to whoever you're going to go after? Or was it just, let's go see what's out there?
I try and stay pretty open-minded early on. But then you kind of narrow as you go through the process, as you kind of see what's there. And you're able to get a few people into the pool that are really good, and now you kind of have a baseline of like, well, they got to measure up to this.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where Ben was like, I'm talking to people, I know he's in the pool. It's like, well, that guy's fantastic, but he's not Ben Jacobson, right? And so you're able to just kind of keep plugging through that. And after a while, you're like, well, it kind of sounds like we just need to go with this guy. And I think that was kind of the case here. But we were open to the idea that it could be a lead assistant at a Power 4. It could be a thing. But as we got through this, as we got through the list of qualities the team gave us, it just became apparent that that head coach experience was probably going to be really important, and that somebody with the character like Coach Jacobson's known for was going to be a really, really good fit. His toughness, his discipline, his style of play all mesh really well with our guys. And you throw in how successful he's been at a place with a fraction of our resources. It's exciting to see what he'll do once he gets here.
There you go. Great stuff, as always. Cameron Walker, athletic director at Utah State. We'll wrap up this thing next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hi, this is Alex Kantrowitz. I'm the host of Big Technology Podcast, a longtime reporter and an on-air contributor to CNBC. And if you're like me, you're trying to figure out how artificial intelligence is changing the business world and our lives. So each week on Big Technology, I bring on key actors from companies building AI tech and outsiders trying to influence it, asking where this is all going. They come from places like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, and plenty more. So if you want to be smart with your wallet, your career choices, in meetings with your colleagues, and at dinner parties, listen to Big Technology Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Did you know fluoride is not available in Utah water systems? And fluoride supplements work best from 6 months to 16 years old. A healthy smile isn't just about teeth. It's about health and confidence. Your smile matters. Find resources at yoursmileutah.org.
Mom, can you tell me a story?
Sure. Once upon a time, a mom needed a new car.
Was she brave?
She was tired, mostly. But she went to Carvana.com and found a great car at a great price. No secret treasure map required.
Did she have to fight a dragon?
Nope. She bought it 100% online. From her bed, actually.
Was it scary?
Honey, it was as unscary as car buying could be.
Did the car have a sunroof?
It did, actually.
Okay, good story.
Car buying you'll want to tell stories about. Buy your car today on Carvana. Delivery fees may apply.
Spring starts at the Home Depot, and we are bringing the heat to your backyard this season. Fire up the flavor with our wide variety of grills for under $300, like the Next Grill 4-burner gas grill that's perfect for hosting your spring cookout. Then set the scene and turn your outdoor space into the go-to spot with patio sets for every budget. Bring it this season with grills that deliver flavor and patios that set the vibe from the Home Depot. Start your spring with low prices guaranteed at the Home Depot. Exclusions apply. See homedepot.com/price match for details.
Hey, I'm Josh Spiegel, host of the podcast Lunatic in the Newsroom. If you enjoy journalism that drifts into mild panic, wild overthinking, and a guaranteed nervous breakdown, Lunatic in the Newsroom is for you. It's news like you've never heard before. The only newsroom with a panic button. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and gasp in horror as the show spirals completely out of control. It's not just news, it's emotionally unstable. Lunatic in the Newsroom. Listen today.
On the teams you're passionate about. This is Scotty G and Friends on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Should be fun. Mackenzie Weegar, Utah Mammoth, will join JJ and Alex coming up in just about an hour from right now at 4:05. Should be a great conversation, especially coming off that win against the Kings. Hey, the Zone and Beehive Mills, honoring the people that impact youth sports in our communities, nominate the youth sports volunteer you know for the Beehive Mills Hero of the Week at KSLSports.com/contest. Then every Thursday afternoon, JJ and Alex will announce the winner. It's the Beehive Mills Hero of the Week. All right, great show today. If you missed it, Cameron Walker joined us. If you missed that, it'll be up on our podcasting feed. Just search Scotty G on your podcasting platform of choice. Also, big thanks to Jay Stevens for breaking down a little hockey. Big 6-2 win for the Mammoth over the Kings. And then Mitch Harper talking a little BYU basketball and looking ahead to spring as well.
Hey, can we, you know what? I needed to probably play this coming in.
Oh, what are you doing?
What?
What are you doing?
You called a walk-off over the weekend. What do you mean, what am I doing? What are you doing, Scotty?
I did call a walk-off shot.
What are you doing, buddy?
Yeah.
I'd appreciate it if you kind of allowed me to play this because it's actually pretty good. Would you like to set it up real quick?
All right. So BYU, I was helping out on the ESPN Plus broadcast. BYU.
New softball play-by-play, Scott Gerard.
BYU, Kansas, bottom of the 7th inning, which means that's the last inning, 7 innings in softball. So bottom of the 7th, tie game, Danica Acosta up to bat for BYU. Partridge, and a shot. Will it drop? It's over! A walk-off home run! How about that? Danica Acosta, 0 for 3 from the plate coming to that one, but she ends it on a right field shot, and BYU is going to knock off Kansas. How about that? That was fun.
That was pretty awesome.
Walk-off home run, bottom of the 7th.
First home run of the year for Acosta?
Yeah, a young woman had not hit a home run. She was 0 for 3 from the plate coming into that one, and bam!
Not gonna lie, she got fooled a little bit with some sort of off speed and was a little bit ahead, but still knocked it over, and she knew it was gone.
Yeah,
fist pumping from the get go.
That was cool. It was fun, man. And by the way, big thanks to ESPN Plus and BYU for allowing me to help out on some games down there. I'm telling you, I am a softball fan. It moves fast. It's fun to call. It's frankly a little bit more fun.
It's only 7 innings.
It's only 7 innings.
A little long.
I even had a
for the non-baseball purists.
It wasn't quite a Pete Rose All-Star game, but we even had a collision at the plate that was really nasty. I mean, there was
injury nasty.
Stayed in the game, but really shaken up. So yeah, I mean, it was fun, man. I enjoy it. All right. Coming up next, JJ and Alex straight ahead, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hi, this is Alex Kantrowitz. I'm the host of Big Technology Podcast, a longtime reporter and an on-air contributor to CNBC. And if you're like me, you're trying to figure out how artificial intelligence is changing the business world and our lives. So each week on Big Technology, I bring on key actors from companies building AI tech and outsiders trying to influence it, asking where this is all going. They come from places like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, and plenty more. So if you want to be smart with your wallet, your career choices, in meetings with your colleagues, and at dinner parties, listen to Big Technology Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, sweetie, your mother showed me this Carvana thing for selling the car. I'm going to give it a try. Wish me luck. Me again. I put in the license plate. It gave me an offer. Unbelievable. Okay, I accepted the offer. They're picking it up Tuesday from the driveway. I haven't even left my chair. It's done. The car is gone. I'm holding a check. Anyway, Carvana, give it a whirl. Love ya.
So good, you'll want to leave a voicemail about it. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.